So often someone asks me related to making selections. Why would you make a selection? Well, the reason you might want to make a selection of a particular area within an image is because you want to change only that portion of the image. You may want to lighten it, darken it, do certain things to it, and you may want to add something only in a certain area. So you need to make a certain selection. Well, over the past few years, Adobe has made some major improvements in making a selection, sky selections, other selections. And I want to show you a little bit of the difference related to those and the selection tools. So I will start today with one of the simple ways of thinking about it. So I will open two images here. One is the sky, and that's the Taos Pueblo in Taos, of course. And when I was there shooting the Pueblo, I wanted to produce it as a panorama so that I could get the entire scene in, which I did. Yes. And as I looked at the image, and often I don't see anyone in the waiting room. So in order to put a sky in it, prior to about 8 months ago with Photoshop, where you can replace the sky, you needed to make a selection of the sky. And I wanted to have people be able to see how to do that. And my volume 4 was first produced in order to put things into the sky. Now, when you have a panorama shot, you need a panorama of the clouds, or if you put just one image in and then try to stretch it, it wouldn't work. So often when I see such beautiful cloud formats, I do a panorama of them so that I can use them in panoramas. And I do a lot of panoramas because I don't carry a large number of lenses with me, and I don't carry a wide angle lens, so I can do it with panoramas. So in this case, I will show you the simple aspect of this. The sky is very clear, easy to do. I just want to show you the techniques. Please mute yourself so that I can don't hear background noises, please. So here we have up in the toolbar, 1, 2, 3, the fourth tool down is the location of the 3 different ways of making a selection. And some are very simple. I'll go through some of these so that you understand them. The first one I will show you is called the magic wand. And the process of the magic wand is up in the toolbar where it says tolerance, 33 is a high number. So if I put the tool in the sky area and click, it selects that level of blue, that color of blue, and as many matching colors as it can to it. Let me back up a little bit. If I change that to a very low number, it'll get more specific about the type of blue that it's selecting. So in this case, I really would like it to be the larger selection of blue. There is very little blue in this other than in the sky. So I can use the magic wand and click on it. And if I want to pick up the remaining of those, I hold the Alt key. I hold the Shift key and click in the other areas, and it will continue to select that blue. So it has selected the sky very nicely for me. Again, I'm going to show you a much easier way now in the sense of what Photoshop has come out with replace sky. Then I would bring in the clouds, go up to select all so they get all the pixels, edit, copy, and I really don't need the clouds anymore. I could close it. I'll just hold it. Yeah, I'll close it. So I don't need that. Now I have the original image with the sky selected. In this case, I go to paste special, not paste. Paste special because I want to paste into the selection. And when I do that, you'll notice on the right-hand side at the layers palette, there's now another layer, layer 1, and it is the clouds. So if I get the move tool, I can, because I have that layer selected, I can move the clouds around. I can move the clouds any position that I want. And when I use this series of clouds, I want the leading line of this cloud on the left pointing down to that building. And I also want the highlight areas against the mountains, because dark against light creates 3 dimensions. So I position things so that it creates more of a 3-dimensional aspect to the image. So that was how I learned to put in clouds in a sky, probably 8 years ago, because often we are somewhere photographing and it's not the sky we want. And I thought, why can't I just put in a different sky? So I would shoot, I have a folder of 250 clouds. It's going to have many different clouds, late day clouds, early morning clouds, all kinds of things. And some are panoramics and some are vertical. But here I put that cloud in. I would come down to the bottom part and just darken that and do some other enhancements on this image to make this stand out. And also because I have the cloud layer, I could use a levels adjustment on the clouds and click this little right here, right over in this area. Oh, I forgot to turn on my circle so you see where my cursor is. But if I click that, it pins it to the cloud layer. So when I change this, it's only changing the cloud layer. Now look at the changes that I've made in those few steps. Come back to history and show you open, and then putting the clouds in, and then doing the final just simple adjustments. Really brings that image out a lot. I'll back up to this for a minute. The other technique of doing a selection, and you'll see why I will use this in a little bit, is called the quick selection tool. It's that second one in the middle there. And when it comes in, it's a circle. And you can make it big or small, and you can make it sharper or less sharp. It allows you to make a selection. So if I just click on the left mouse button and roam around and I always stop a little bit so that I get it in steps, so that I can, in my history, go back rather than trying to select everything at one time. And that did a really good job again. So I could go to the edit, paste special, because I still have those pixels there, created that other layer, get my move tool, move the clouds around. So it's another way of making a selection. Come back to that for a minute. It's called the quick selection tool. It works very well with this image because the sky is so clear overall and it's very easy to get to it. Before I get into the more sophisticated techniques, one of the greatest features that they've added, they being Photoshop, is under edit, sky replacement. Oh my goodness, really? Wow. And it works extremely well, especially if you have trees and things. And I happen to have that cloud. You can add your own clouds into this capability. So it's working on bringing the clouds into the image automatically for me. And it will take a little time, but I've also could look at the other clouds they have available for this. So when this one is finally into that image, I can move down through their various selections and add them to the image. So come on, get in there. There you go. It put the clouds in there. Now I have a number of these sliders. Shift the edge, and I'll go through all this, but shifting the edge as to how will it relate to the bar where it's the mountain and the buildings, how will it work on that? Sky adjustments, brightness, I can lower that so that it's not as bright, but once I come, I'll show you another aspect of having that as a separate layer. And I can move it around, take the cursor into the area and move it around, and you see how it's fitting here in a certain way. So I probably would want to scale this higher and do some things about it, because it's not fitting as easily as what I did at the previous step. But there it is. And down at the bottom, I'll put 2, make sure that it says new layers. So that when you click, oh, before I do that, up at the top, the drop down allows me to scan through all the different clouds that are available. And so, geez, I could even put in, let's try that, just take a look and see what it looks like by putting it through. Well, that's another sky that it will put in there. Interesting. Come down to some other images. You could just play with these various skies that they have available for you. And I was able to add a couple of my own. Up at the top here in the right-hand corner of this selection, it has that little gear looking icon. Here, put that image in there, and I can come over and move it around, and I can brighten it and do some other things to it. But if you come up to that area and click on that little icon, you can import skies. So you can import them from images, and so various folders you can bring clouds in. So very flexible. And there are YouTubes available on this capability. Getting back to the sliders, you need to click up here in the empty area. Now you have the sliders. Come down here, new layers, okay. When you do that, look at the layers palette. It has added another layer for the sky, for the foreground adjustments, so on. So once I have the cloud layer there, I can do things to just the cloud layer by doing the same things I did before. Maybe do levels and clip it to just affecting, see the clipping right there, just affecting the cloud, the sky, and then I can do adjustments on that because I have it as a separate layer. That's the advantage of bringing those back as a layer. All right, let's see some of the complications related to having different types of images and you want to put a sky in.
John, can you get rid of the Zoom meeting icon up there, green?
Can I what? Move
Get rid of
this?
it. Yeah.
All right, there you go. So you think, oh, well, the same thing. I could use the magic wand and select the various blues. Hold the shift key, continue to select. And up in the options bar, very important, is you see where it says contiguous? And it's clicked. So because it's contiguous, it will not pick up the sky in that area here because it's contiguous. So if you want to pick up the sky, that blue, inside those areas, you need to turn off the contiguous when you make the selection. Let me start from the beginning. I turn that off. Now I click there, and you see it's also picking up the blue in the tree over here. I'm clicking to continue to get the blue in all parts of the, and it's picking up the blue in all these other areas, but also in the windmill area and so on. So you say, how do I adjust that? Well, one way to adjust it, over in the bottom of the toolbar, I want black and white squares. And if I come up to the, you hit the Q key, it shows you the image. Anything that's in red is not selected. Anything that's the natural color is selected. So you see the natural color down in the water. And this is what we needed to do before Replace Sky capability came out. And you would take the paintbrush on the toolbar, with black in the foreground, black paints as red on these images. Make sure you have it opacity up to 100%, and paint over where you do not want any of the selection to be part of the image. So you would go through all these areas on the buildings and around to the sides. And now I'm adjusting the mask. In a sense, I'm adjusting the mask to be how I want it to be related to the sky aspect. So you see what I'm doing. You get it. I'd be a little more careful about doing some of these. Hit the Q key to come back. Now it shows me that the sky has been selected inside the area of the windmill and all the other areas. And you see there's some blinking on the houses over here. I could do the Q key again and paint with the black and come back. I've cleared it up mostly. Good. Now edit, paste special, paste into. And I have that as a separate layer now. Remember, it's still the same clouds I had from the beginning when I brought them in and did a selection, edit, copy. So now I take the move tool and I can move this sky around. It's the panorama sky that I had in the Taos Pueblo. So now, wow, very nice. So that's another way. Here's the really wonderful aspect of what Adobe has done. So here's the same image. Bring this up. Go to edit, replace sky, sky replacement. And it will work on the sky. And whatever I had in there from before is coming in as a default. And I'll select a different cloud formation when it gets there, but it'll show you how well they put that in every part of the image. In among the tree areas, the branches, everything. So the sky replacement is really fantastic. I'll come back up to all the skies and come down to one of these. This one. So I click on that and it puts it in. It's clouds I had before, and I can bring the cursor over and move it around. And you notice that it's working in among the tree. See that? Right inside the tree, inside every area along the windmill. Don't need to worry about what's in the water because it won't put it there. It puts it only in the sky area. I think the feature is wonderful. And also because it is a separate layer. So I'll click OK. It's a separate layer. I can click on that layer and edit, free transform. And you see that it has the entire image is bigger than what was necessary for this image, but I can change this around by just doing free transfer and adjusting the clouds any way that I want to adjust them. And the reason I have to adjust them is that the panorama that I had for the sky is much wider than the panorama I had for the foreground. So once I have that, click OK. I click on the check mark. So there's the sky. So sky replacement did it automatically then to go through all of that process I did about selecting, clearing the stuff down in the water, clearing all those things. It's a wonderful tool and it creates those separate layers for you so you can do adjustments. Again, here's the sky layer. I could put levels on that, adjust the mid-tone slider, darkens it. Well, if I don't clip it to the sky, it darkened the whole image. Actually, it looks pretty good. But if I click the sky, it's only working on this. If I do the clipping, it only works on the sky. And then I have to do something for the bottom. I could turn the clipping off and it does that. And in this case, I would come down to the background, get my dodge tool to lighten up the center a little bit, put it on midtones, and just run it across the middle just a little bit to highlight that's where I want your eye to go. And that's really fairly easy to do. Okay. Let's go. Do you have any questions? I can answer them.
A quick question, John. How do you know whether to use the midtones or the dark or the highlights when you use your...
Good question. Okay. Let me come back to this image. Without the clouds in there, I'll still explain. When I use a levels adjustment, the left triangle are black pixels, dark pixels. And you know that from a histogram, anything that's touching the edge means there's some pure black. There's some pure black in this image. Over on the right-hand side is white. So just touching. So something in here is pure white. My guess is it's that area there, or maybe on this door here. I want to darken the midtones. I don't want, if I bring this right slider in, I'll start blowing out texture in white areas. And I don't want to do that. This house now has no texture in the white area. So if I push that back that way, if I move the black slider in, I'm creating areas with no detail in them. I don't want that because I like detail in all the areas that I can. So I can adjust the midtones. If I move it to the right, it darkens the midtones. If I move it to the left, it lightens the midtones. So it gives me a nice way of creating a little bit more interest and pushing the eye in. So it's a matter of using that middle slider. There's one other feature that I use a lot on images, and it's called the brightness contrast. What I just explained about the levels with that right-hand triangle, if you move that in, it starts blowing out other the white areas, losing detail. What I've noticed about using the brightness contrast is it seems to be able to brighten the image without blowing apart the whites, which I think is amazing, wonderful at times that I use that.
Wow.
And then just moving the contrast slider creates a little more contrast in the image. So I can brighten things without blowing out the highlights. That's the wonderful part of those two adjustments. I use them all the time.
John,
Yes.
when you show an image like that, or any image, particularly a couple backward was fairly small, could you control 0 so that it fills the screen? I like to look and see that the tree areas were filled in, and I can do that when it's filling the full screen.
Yes. The trees are very important that it would fill in, and that's why the new feature is so much better than trying to select the blue that's in among the trees and things like that. So it works real well. Stay tuned here to let me come back to the skies in a minute, because the one I will end with is so unique. Here's an image. I want to go back to making.
I have a
Yes.
question. Have you done any comparisons of the Photoshop feature to the Luminar Sky feature at all?
Oh, I have. And Luminar is not there yet, except they have a better feature related to inverse reflection, meaning if you have water and you put a sky in, they also put the reflection of the sky in the water. So they're a little bit ahead of Adobe in the sense of how they're making some of the features work. But there are some things, and I'm an affiliate with Luminar, so I'm giving them some input. And one of them is, it takes so doggone long for the software to come up. Jeez, come on, make that a little faster, guys. In fact, I should do that right now because I want to.
You mean the
Go to
Luminar
that.
AI?
Luminar AI is what I'm talking about.
I've noticed the same thing. It takes about a good 20 to 25 seconds to open.
Yes, it does. And I think, come on, speed that up. You can speed this up. But that's one aspect. The other is some of their other capabilities are not as effective, but they're getting there as doing levels or other kinds of adjustments. But they are doing some wonderful things. Here is another aspect of selection. And this has been added to Adobe Photoshop not too long ago. It is called, when I come to the selection tools, and you can get there other ways, but I always just click on, in Photoshop, there are multiple ways to do the same thing, always. And I'm selecting the selection tools, clicking on that. And up in the options bar, it says select subject. And they've improved this a lot. So I want to select that flower, just the flower. And so when I click on select subject, it will work on that and go around the pixels. It's looking for contrasts and aspects of what's making that stick out from the background, because I want to adjust the foreground, then the background. So I need to make a selection of specifically the flower. So it's working on selecting that subject. Now, if it doesn't pick up all the aspects, I'll show you how to add to it or subtract from it. My computer is running a little slow this morning, but we'll get there. So select subject is a very neat capability. Maybe.
John, did you have to click on the flower after you clicked on select
No,
subject?
no, it selects it here. Now it's working on it. It will go through the whole image. You just wait, be patient to get the full
Get a
selection.
cup of coffee.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. It selected the entire flower. Another option on this that you need to think about from time to time is up in the select, modify. You can expand or contract the selection you made. In this case, I want to contract it a little bit so that when I change the background, it will be right up against the edge. So I'm contracting by 2 pixels so that I'm bringing it in onto the flower. Now with this selection, I want to work on the background first. I could work on the flower, but if I'm thinking of darkening the background, then the flower should be changed in relation to the background. If I change the flower first, then the background, then I back and forth, and I'll show you how to go back and forth. But I want to go to the background, so I can do a select inverse, and now it has selected everything but the flower. And if I come over to the adjustments, go to levels, and move the middle slider to the right, it will darken just the background so that I can have that flower stand out much more. Look at the 3-dimensionality. That's the
Oh,
aspect about
Beautiful.
doing things to an image that you want to have it be more artistic, or you're submitting it to a competition. You want to do these kinds of things. So here I have that. Another wonderful aspect of having that selection is that the mask is created automatically when I make an adjustment. So anything that's black is turning off the effect of that adjustment, which means it's not affecting the flower because that's the black that I had excluded from the background. But if I hold, when I hold the control key and click on that mask, it brings the dancing ants back. And I want them back so that I can do a select inverse. And now I have only the flower. So I can do an adjustment on the flower without affecting the background. So here's the histogram, and notice that it's a lot to the right because the flower. So I can do some adjustments just to the flower to have it have a little more feeling. Also, by having that layer, I can click on the control key, click that again to get just the flower. Come down to the pixel layer, and I can take those pixels only, not the background, into Camera Raw because I made a selection. When you make a selection and you go to Camera Raw, it is bringing into Camera Raw only those pixels that you have in your selection. So I'm coming into Adobe Camera Raw so that I can do some texturing. So I'll come to the Basic tab, come down to the bottom, use clarity a little bit, and do texture, which will add more texture to the flower. Let's back it off just a little bit. Click OK. And now it will change the flower and not the background because of that selection.
John, I have a question before you go on. When you were in levels with this, both the flower and the background,
Yes,
up comes that right there. Is that essentially your histogram?
that is the histogram
Because,
of that flower, of the flower
okay,
only.
this is what confuses me. When I look at a histogram, the right side is the white point and left
Yes.
side is the black point.
Yes.
So in this case, when you were moving to the right, you were darkening the background.
And
Why, it seems reversed to me.
no, I wasn't, if I have the flower selected and I'm moving the middle slider, I'm affecting the
The
flower.
flower, but, okay, either way, I'm saying that when you darkened the background, when you had
Yes.
it
Yes,
inverse,
okay,
you're
you go.
moving it to the right, okay? And it's getting darker when you go to the right,
that's correct. And when you go to the left, it lightens it.
but
It's
that's
just-
opposite of what the histogram is.
Yeah, so this is just a histogram in relation to the pixels. It's not the histogram on your camera. It's just a spread from black to white. That's all, just showing you the intensities. So don't confuse the two related to what's on your camera versus what you're using on these
Okay, but with the
adjustments.
pixels, so that
John.
you're just moving it to the right gives you darker pixels.
Darker pixels, and you're
Okay.
darkening the midtones. You're not darkening the black pixels.
Right,
You're not
right.
darkening the, right, yes, so just
know,
darkening the black ones, yes.
In order to keep that straight myself, if you're moving the mid-tone slider to the right, I look at it as pulling more dark into the image.
Oh,
Good point. That's good point. Good way of
thank you,
saying it.
Jeffrey. That is a good point. Thank you. And thank you,
Now-
John, as well.
Sure.
I'll hold the control key and click on the, also before I go there, you should double click on the names of the layers. And so that this is recommended, so you know that that's the background adjustment. This one is the flower adjustment, so you know which one you're working with. I just get so accustomed to it, I don't think to label those anymore, but you could do that by just double clicking on the name and then changing it. So here I have the background. If I hold the control key and click on that mask, I get the background again. And I can double click on that little icon that looks like a crown and change the background a little bit more to darken but not lose detail in the lower right. Then come down to the background pixel layer, you get the burn tool, and I want to put it on midtones at about 16% and just darken that background area a little bit more where it's a little too bright related to the other parts of the image so that that flower stands out even more. And in this area up here, I just want to remove that almost entirely so that it's not causing the eye to go in that area. So look at that, compare it, I'll remove the dancing ants. So here's an image of doing those kinds of adjustments from here to here by using the selection and working on parts of the image. That's why selections are so important. And when you make a selection of anything, you can take that into Adobe Camera Raw and work only on those pixels. To finish this image, how I would want it, is to darken the flower a little bit on the edge here, the left edge, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit in the background, and a little bit down here. Then I would get the sponge tool on saturate at about 21% and just bring out the color there. Watch the difference of what I just did of those subtleties on that flower.